Hello, I'm Russell Brand. This episode of Under the Skin from Luminary Media is free and it's fantastic. It's got Ricky Gervais in it. Ricky Gervais, one of the best comedy stars the world's ever known. I think it's safe to say he was up there with your Chaplins, your Cleeses, your Coogans. They're all British comedians whose names start with C. That's what I'm interested in. Your Cooks, your Hancocks. Ricky Gervais, outspoken, host of The Globes, creator of Extras, The Office, Afterlife, season 2 of which is on Netflix now, and it's because of him promoting that he's even come on our podcast. This is for you, for nothing. But if you want to sign up and get all of the episodes of Under the Skin, which let me tell you are worth it, as well as all the other fantastic content that's on that platform, podcasts from Karomo, from Queer Eye, content from Lena Dunham. Go on, get down then. No one's making you stay here. You're not a hostage. I'd say this is a fantastic episode of Under the Skin. I'm very proud of it. It's a brilliant conversation with Ricky Gervais. It's a joy to talk to him. Me and him, as we discuss, see the world somewhat differently, although we've got loads of things in common. We talk about God, atheism, animals, love, class. Fantastic stuff. You'll really, really enjoy it. If you want to get Luminary, if this episode indicates to you that these are the kind of conversations you might be into, then you can get it for as little as $2.99 a month with the Luminary annual plan, and you can get a 7-day free trial, which I would recommend to all of you. Check out the brilliant podcasts I've done with, other podcasters like on the platform like Lena Dunham and Karamo, but also David Eagleman, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox, Yanis Varoufakis. I mean, there's like brilliant intellectual conversations. Naomi Klein. I mean, it's just like Dr. Shafali last week. I mean, I really think they're valuable conversations. But this one, For Nothing with Ricky, is it's especially good, as you would imagine, from Ricky Gervais. And let me reiterate, Afterlife, which I've watched, is on Netflix now, and it's fantastic. Check it out.
Hello,
mate. It's so lovely to see you.
Look at you all grown up.
I've become an adult.
Well, I'm relieved you're not sat there in a sheet. That was a deal breaker. I said I wanted to conform to Western ways just for 1 hour.
I didn't even need to have that explicitly explained to me. I intuited that it might not be wise to interview you in a sheet.
And why is it 1 p.m? I mean, that is bang on soup and snooze hour for me. I have a little lentil soup and then I have a little nap, right? So now I've actually had my soup at 12:30, gobbled that down. It was very hot. And my nap is postponed till 2 p.m. So this is just some of the hardship that I've been going through during the pandemic.
It's a grueling tale, even to sit and listen to, Ricky, that kind of suffering. It's like the Gulag Archipelago, listening to some of that stuff.
You've got a real mic and everything.
Yeah, because I do, I've been doing a podcast for ages, so we put one in the garage, like a little podcast studio.
I went from the only person with a podcast to the only person without one. So I had to go the other way.
You're an outlier, a pioneer, and an extremist.
Yes, I'm a rebel. I've always been a rebel. Like Tony Hancock, in fact, just like Tony Hancock's rebel.
There's no question you're in that lineage. No question. Should we do this little interview? Start it officially. I'll start it with like a compliment to put you at your ease. It's really lovely to interview you.
Because I am very nervous.
I can see that you're racked.
It might be the soup that I drank too quickly.
Yeah, esophageal burning and anxiety have similar symptoms. It's lovely to have a proper interview with you. We've had met a few times. I've never been able to speak to you at depth, but like anyone, I admire you as a comedian very, very much. And I still watch a lot of your stuff, maybe even just when you're doing Facebook lives, but also I still watch The Office. I watch Afterlife, checking out the new series, which is what you're promoting at the moment, doing these podcasts and that. And it's a real joy to talk to you, Ricky.
Thank you. Same. Pleasure.
Thanks, mate. I suppose
my compliment was a lot shorter than yours, wasn't it? I didn't give you much back. I felt it wasn't the place because I feel like a guest.
You are a guest. You are a guest, and in a sense, it's proportionate to our BAFTA backdrops. You've got endless masks. I've got a drape.
Right, let me explain. I've made an effort. I've put a nice little jumper on. I've washed and all that. But this is my desk. I'm at my desk. This is the smallest room in the house because I thought the echo would, because the other rooms are vast, and it wouldn't be good for a podcast. So, okay, this isn't like cribs where I've hired them. I really did win them.
I was watching. I remember a good many of them. Then I don't know what that boar is. Like there's a wild boar. I guess that's some sort of writing guild, or is it simply an ornament?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a work of art that that was auctioned for charity, and I gave so generously. That reminds me what a great person I am.
It's good to have a memento of your own greatness next to those less abstract accolades.
Good.
I live pretty near where you're from, mate. So I see sort of and you're from Reading, and of course, and then
Henley, aren't you?
Yeah. It's obviously lovely round here. Do you live near here?
Well, we've got a little place quite near you, but I'm mostly in leafy Hampstead, where people like you aren't allowed, if I'm being honest.
I was there briefly for a while. I lived on Gardner Road at what I might call the height of my decadence, near Flask Walk. And
beautiful. Well, we used to visit this place, before we lived here. We lived in the centre ever since sort of college. And explaining to Americans what Hampstead is like, I say it's sort of bohemian and eclectic, and it's the sort of great grandchildren of artists and poets and new money. I always feel that it was like the Beverly Hillbillies when I rolled into town. So, and I think we're from similar sort of backgrounds where we moved up to be able to live next door to wealthy people. So I still feel when I walk into the Ivy, there's a certain amount of disappointment on people's faces.
Yeah, it's incredible actually, and it's sort of a very clear in your humour that you have that kind of background. I remember watching Martin Freeman on something once saying that you were the first person he'd met that had a sense of humour that made him laugh like people at school. And I remember when you used to do on stuff on 11 o'clock show. And you talked about, I remember in particular one time when you talked about the apocryphal, oft-told tale of someone wanking and then opening their eyes and having a cup of tea there. And I guess this was probably 20 years ago, but I remember watching that and thinking, oh, that's funny, man. That's funny. And I suppose, and how have you maintained, and do you think you've maintained that kind of access to normality and that kind of brittle, spiky working class humour now that you are ensconced on the hill?
Well, I think I have in many ways. Obviously, all my family still live around Reading, Wokingham, Thatcher, and they're what you'd call a working class. They're all manual workers or carers, and then there's 50. I haven't counted them. Sort of great nieces and nephews that and so there's that. You're always connected to your family. You always feel at home with your family. So there's that. I do it. I sort of do it quite consciously, try and remember my roots, because as a comedian, so professionally, I sort of do as well. I think because we're court jesters, we have to be court jesters. We have to have low status. We're in the mud with all the other peasants, teasing the king. Not too much, because we don't want to get killed. But we have to keep our low status somehow, I think. I feel I want to. And I do that in two ways, and you do this as well. One, I invite them behind the curtain. I go, what, you think it's great being rich and famous? Well, this is what I said in front of the Queen this is the first time I got a private jet. They thought I was the cook. So I do that. I give them the horror stories where I was the wrong person. I shouldn't have been there. I tell them that. And the other way I do it is I talk about things where they're better off than me. I talk about being fat and old and balding. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to die soon. And so you do have to, particularly when people know what top comedians earn now, it's like, I sort of embrace that as well. I tease them, I did, talking about house and wealth in an ironic way, and they get that as well. And I'm sort of saying, listen, this is luck. Do you know what I mean? This isn't. I don't think I deserve this. But I think people get it as long as you're honest. It would if I see a millionaire comedian going either way, either side of that, like talking down to an audience, that everything's is a battle story that they won, or they're already on stage, they're already in an expensive suit or whatever, and now they're telling the audience that they're wrong. Again, I do that ironically, but they get it like a mate. I call them scum, and they know, they get that I'm saying the opposite. But it would be equally stupid when I see millionaire comedians going. So I was signing on yesterday, and I was on the bus, and I'm like, no, you fucking weren't. No, you weren't. But I usually go the other way. Like a typical joke I did in Humanity was press. They always ask, wealthy entertainers, how much is a pint of milk? So that's meant to show you then I say, I don't know, I haven't checked. But the next time someone asks me, I say, I don't know, mate, it is £1,000, run and get me one. So I sort of embrace my privilege for comic effect, I think.
The first thing that most of us know you for, it couldn't be a clearer exemplification of authenticity. The Office, whether it's the way it was shot, the way that it was scripted, the kind of acute observation of normality and mundanity. So like sort of from the outset, there is an authenticity to your work. With something that more recent, like Afterlife, which I watched as I was instructed to. Watched the first couple. It's brilliant. It's, it's perfect. Like someone told me, you've got to watch it. I watched 1.5, do you know what I mean? And I've loved the first series. I think there's great people in it. I love Roisin. I love that woman Jo that's in it. I think it's a really brilliant cast. I love her that's off of Charlie Brooker's stuff as well. She's wicked. Obviously, you're great. What are you? Do you have the same level of authenticity and sort of, I don't know, candor when you're making something like that? And if so, where are you getting the stuff about suicide and despair from?
It's sort of the only thing I care about now, more and more. Every day I wake up and I sort of say, is this honest enough? Is this more truthful? I'm peeling away these layers, and I'm going, it sends you mad, because I don't feel that I want to be more famous or richer or win more awards. I feel that am I using my platform to its greatest effect now? Am I being more honest? Am I getting everything off my chest before I die? Do I really mean this? I can only do things that I'm passionate about, because you'll get caught out. So the answer is yes. And the Office, I suppose, realism was sort of fortuitous or by accident or whatever. Because I worked in an office for 10 years, so it was harder for me to get it wrong. You know what I mean? Because I'm going, well, that wouldn't happen, that didn't happen, that wouldn't. So that was easy. I was also emulating something. It was a fake docu-soap, and I'd watched a lot of those through the 90s, where an ordinary person got their 15 minutes of fame, and it was interesting just being at work. So that was the influences. So it was easy. It was easy to make it real. And, later you find out that we probably cheated less than real documentaries, particularly by today's standards. We wouldn't have a camera waiting for someone. We wouldn't get them caught doing something unless it was a really elaborate spy or they forgot their mic was on. So I've always been obsessed with realism. My favourite things were real, even to the point that the first time I saw a Mike Lee thing, I'm sort of, I don't know, 13, 14, I just thought, I've never seen this before. People talking over each other. And it wasn't even intimate. It was a shoddy old play shot with a few cameras. It wasn't even as good as it became. And even in Abigail's Party, which I thought, and I still think is genius, there's one bit that made me feel guilty. That when he says, and it's a great joke. He goes, Shakespeare, complete works of Shakespeare, leather bound. And they go, he's showing off, and he goes, of course, you couldn't read that sort of thing. And I sort of thought, well, that's a snobby joke, because you know what, most people don't, is he taking the piss out of my tribe that are trying to better themselves but not quite get it right? And there was still a little flitter of, oh, okay. So when I came to do it myself, I did want to embrace that sort of honest working class thing. I wanted a mix. I like Billy Connolly. I just thought I wanted to be like him. That he spoke to his crowd like you do to a mate down a pub. And I remember when I first I had a meeting with Channel 4 about the show, even before The Office, when I did the 11 o'clock show. And the big thing there was Chris Morris and Brass Eye, which I still think is amazing. But it's also very sort of Guardian-y, isn't it? It's not like, do you know what I mean? It's that the people who love it, and I thought I want to mix that sort of comedy and that sort of, I suppose, pursuit of excellence and intellect, but make it sort of accessible. And so I remember I want to do. I was talking to someone, and I said I sort of want to bring that to the working classes, which sounds very patronising, early days. But I felt that my family didn't watch Brass Eye. I felt like I was part of the media loving something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I understand the idea of sort of cultural elitism and esotericism. And I feel like, you obviously have an incredibly refined sense of humour, and at the risk of bolstering a compliment that I've already given you that was scarcely reciprocated, I feel like you're a genius, in a proper Hancock, Cleese, Coogan kind of lineage. And even though your background is sort of marked by ordinariness and the sort of gentle beauty of the ordinary is obviously something that captivates you, there is something alienating first, I think, about that kind of insight that you have, and I would offer also secondarily by becoming very successful. And I wonder about how you've experienced alienation both prior to success and subsequent to it. Also bearing in mind, prior to your comedy career, the stuff with the new romantic looking 20-year-old Ricky Gervais stuff. And also remember, I did mention to you about suicide and despair earlier. So if you can just have an answer that covers all of that territory.
Jesus. Well, I don't know if I don't know. I don't think I've ever suffered from any of those more chronic conditions. I've never really felt that alienated, or I've never suffered from terrible anxiety or depression without cause. I've had grief, loved ones die and all that. Growing up, I didn't know I was poor and working class till I was 14, 15. I didn't. Do you know what I mean? We're all in the same boat. I went to a comprehensive school. I was smart, so I was in the top few there. I always felt I'd go to university. you know what I mean? I never felt everything's out of my reach. I never thought it won't happen to you, which is odd. Yeah. I don't know why I had that confidence. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Maybe it was bravado. Or maybe I just thought that's the only way to do it, academia. It's so funny because, 500 years ago, to move through a class, you had to be a great warrior and you might get a knighthood, but that was very rare and dangerous. Then the industrialists started, finding coal or prospectors went and found gold, and they moved up and they moved into neighborhoods like mine. They became wealthier than the wealthy. But in our sort of lifetime, I suppose the last group to do it is pop culture. It's footballers and pop stars where, you suddenly heard working class and regional accents, and they were in mansion houses and driving Rolls Royces into pools, which I'm sure you've done, but I never would. I'd go, that's a waste. Let's get you. So throwing a telly out. We can fix this. We can fix this. So I'm sort of aware of all those things, but I never felt it. I was never conscious of it. I suppose the first time I went for an interview at university, that's when I heard people who sounded a bit like the Queen, and I hadn't heard that accent. My teachers were working class. It was like everything. They were working class. They were lads. They were working class lads in a comprehensive school in Reading. So that's when I started mixing with people, of difference in class and wealth. And I remember meeting someone. He didn't know what a supermarket was, and I thought he was winding me up. And I guess I was playing it a bit because in my first year I gave myself a skinhead, and I loved the fact that I was ID'd going into the college and I could show my. So I definitely, and I remember I wore my dad's old Lang donkey jacket in 19. Hi guys, I'm working class. I'm one of the 6%. Hi guys, you know what I mean? It's like, but what was the last part of the question?
Well, I guess I was sort of talking about, like, you've sort of explained didn't feel alienated, but you also don't seem like you wore literally your class as a badge and didn't feel inferiority. And like, I suppose, like, a character like David Brent, like, who's like under all this sort of excruciating social pressure and wants to better himself on camera,
yes,
right through to the protagonist in Afterlife dealing with despair. Like, it's like, in your, like, and of course your obsession with authenticity, I wonder where in your own life, is it something that's very private to you, feelings of pain?
It's difficult because it does go into your art, but sometimes, I'm very keen for people to know that they shouldn't use every joke as a window to the soul of the comedian, because sometimes I'll make a joke or routine that is the opposite of what I feel, because it makes the joke better. And I'm militant about people going, listen, it sometimes it really is just a joke, and sometimes it's the opposite of what I believe. I start with my supernature, so I do a sort of an off-colour joke, and they go, oh, they've grown, and I go, well, that was irony, you see, because that's when I say something I don't really mean, and you as an audience laugh at the wrong thing because you know what the right thing is. It's a way to, and I sort of, and they get it, and then I'll call back to that. Sometimes I go, no, don't let me down now, remember what we said. So I'm playing with those constraints and misunderstandings. But your first point is that David Brent, he was sort of on that cusp. I was fascinated that Cleese did it a little bit with Fawlty Towers, where he was sort of lower middle class, and he wanted to. His aspiration was Buckingham Palace, whereas by the time I got around to doing The Office, the new aspiration was Beckingham Palace. It was that sort of level. You know what I mean? I want to be on telly. That or whatever. I want to be on telly. I want to be famous. And it was just creeping in then. And it was a very important part of The Office. Without it being a fake documentary, that is a very boring average sitcom. There's some jokes, there's some great performances. But if you don't know why this man is acting like that, you've lost 50% of what's funny and tragic about that. And you're right, he's trying to move, just like Basil Fawlty, he's trying to move, right? But he's doing it for the same reasons, right? And all this bullshit, I want that, I want this, we need that, we have to do that. But it all comes down to one thing, right? It's being happy. It's being happy with yourself and having, and then what's being happy with? There's so many boxes to tick, and the one people forget is worth. It's absolutely massive. It's worth, and so all those things went into David Brent, but he basically needed a hug. And I remember in the days when you were in every paper and doing every interview, right? Someone said, "What's your favourite thing?" And you said, "The Office." And there was a picture of David Brent, and you talked about David Brent, and you said it's beautiful, it's sad, and it is. And I remember that one of the first times I'd read that it is sad, because he needs a hug. That's all he's doing. He's saying, "Am I good enough? Do you love me yet?" And it's fucking tragic. And when you know that, I think you like David Brent. Yeah. I think you like him.
Yeah, I always did. But then my favourite lines, I like that. I was thinking about it recently. That's not good news and bad news. That's good news and irrelevant news. And you go, that's not a phrase, though, is it?
But now that level of narcissism is mediocre. Now we have leaders saying things like that. The bad news is that the pandemic. The good news is I'm up 3 in the polls. You know, it's like it really, and it just got worse and worse. I had to really up my game for life on the road because it had been 15 years, and now David Brent wasn't even that odd or annoying compared to. Do you know what I mean? People on The Apprentice who say, "I will destroy anyone who stands in my way." That is like an unwritten law with the producers going, "Let me on and I'll behave badly." For Big Brother contestants, "Let me in there and I'll start a fight and take my clothes off." Okay, you promise? Yeah. With this obsession with seeing normal people destroy themselves. Some of them, I don't know how some of them passed the medical exam, because some of them, they shouldn't be in there, and it's not good for them. No. This thing where people keep going back to fame and going, "Do you love me yet?" No, they don't love you. They want you to fail. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a kind of there's been a glorification of idiocy in culture, and it seems like that's something that still annoys you. That sort of celebration of stupidity, and it seems like a lot of what you're saying, is that you're a grounded person. Like you said, my role is a jester. I don't want to get out of my box. So, you can tease the king, but don't start trying to grab the crown or anything. But what about what is, see with the, there's 2 areas I want to talk to you about. One, your deep love of animals. And 2, your obvious, very public and articulate atheism. And I'll sort of talk about how I see those things as correlative, I suppose, as we go on about it. But firstly, have you always been like that with the animals?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't remember not loving animals. I mean, I was born into a family with pets, and it was all. I remember when I was a kid, my brother was 10 years older than me, and he got in trouble, right, for punching a bloke in the park. And all my mum wanted of us really was to not just to go to jail or die in a barroom fight. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't international comedian. Just don't die before me, you know, and so he must have been, I don't know, it was an adult, and she went, "Why'd you punch him for?" And he went, "He kicked the dog." And my mum went, "Oh, all right." So that was my first bit of, street justice. But yeah, my mum loves animals. We always had a dog and a cat, and I remember 5, 6, 7 years old. I'm just out in the garden all the time. I was fascinated with the world. I wanted to know everything about the world. Where did this animal evolve from? What's he connected to? I just wanted to. I wanted it all. I suppose learning was my first love, but science and nature, I've always been fascinated with it. I still am. It's always been a privilege. It makes me feel good. I don't know why. An animal makes me. I'm in awe of an animal, and even down to our cat died recently, but it was like if that cat was sat on me, it's our cat. Right, we own it, right, as much as you can. It was still a privilege that cat wanted to sit on me. I think what a privilege that is, and I can't stress enough that we're. And I know you totally agree with this. That we're just part of nature. We're not above it. We're nothing special. We're not as important as bees. We're not as important as bees. Right? Let's let that sink in. So yeah, I absolutely love animals, and my big hate out of everything about preservation and nature and this species and that species is still animal cruelty. I don't get it. I don't know why. I don't know the pleasure. I'm worried about the psychology of people who and there's a scale. Obviously, there's a weird scale from sort of serial killer to people who just don't think they're worth worrying about that much, But yeah, I've never. It keeps me awake. It's the only thing that makes my blood boil and keeps me awake at night, And now we've got Twitter, and you do what you can. There's not a day go by when someone doesn't send me something. I go, "Oh, I wish that wasn't in my head," but it is. So I've got to do something now,
Yeah. I suppose there must be like people that and people that are capable of being cruel to animals. It seems, I would guess, is a kind of rupture between that person and their sort of knowledge of us all sort of feeling pain, a kind of a sort of an impeded compassion or something, an inability to feel. And
there's something. Yeah, you're right. There's something wrong with someone who actually enjoys seeing an animal in pain. That's one end of the scale, But then there's people who are in denial. There's lots of propaganda out there why it's okay, why why bullfighting's okay, because it's an honourable way for the bull to die. Shut up, because it's tradition. Well, so was slavery and child sacrifice. It's culture. It's not culture, right? It's like what? I don't get it. I don't get it. And the things that then you find out, the things behind it, right? This fucking sequin with a sword, right? They've already drugged the fucking bull. They cut the tendons on the back of his neck. They fucking blunt the. Let's keep it fair. Let's send him. Honestly, why have you done this to me? Why have you done? Yeah, I don't get it.
I reckon a lot of the problems that we're experiencing in the world, like right across the scope of our conversation so far, whether it's people craving fame, adulation, celebrity approval, or people being cruel to animals, I reckon much of it can be derived from a sense of being separate from nature, whether that's inner nature or outer nature, like that people see themselves as isolated, alienated individuals that they're making their own luck in the world and live sort of in a world extracted from meaning or devoid of meaning. And this is where I suppose I'm interested in the way that I know, because I've listened to your stuff, like that your atheism began when you sort of saw your mum like go, "Don't say that" to your brother when you was like a kid, about like, as if like, and that Jesus was a sort of a kind of an additional babysitter and an omnipresent sort of, nanny of the estate. But
exactly.
But cause like I spend Because, see, I spend a lot of time, I suppose. I'm a solipsistic, narcissistic person. You know, I've been through the mill with addiction, with fame and sex and drugs and money and all that kind of stuff. And it's placed me in a point where I've had to open myself up to different ideas. I imagine if you and I talked about institutional or orthodox religion and the way that it is structured and the way that power is deployed, prejudice enacted, violence underwritten, I reckon we'd probably agree. But one of the things that I feel is that my own love of animals, and also my cat did die last week, sadly. He was also 16 because Jenny told me. And it, like, I was so affected by it. I was surprised by the amount of grief and sadness that I felt. Like, it took me apart. I let it hit me full on. We buried him in the garden. I dug a hole. I got into it. There was only one self-indulgent bit. Everything was sincere, except for one moment, Ricky. I did smear soil on my face as a sort of expression of deep grief.
Whatever gets you through.
That's what I needed to do. That's just me expressing myself.
I'm done. And I think the way you're going is that I seem a spiritual person, but not literally, and that's totally true. That I'm in as much awe at seeing a tree or a mountain or a bird or a river as anyone who thinks God made it. I see the beauty of nature, and I think most, and I don't know this, but you're right. There's a huge difference between spirituality. There's something to the south that gets you through, that you want to know the reason, you want to connect, all those things. I feel all those things without the belief in a God or gods. Religion's something else. Religion basically says you want to get into heaven. I know him. You just got to do this shit for me, and we're cool. You know. We know that everything that's ever started was written by usually a man with an agenda. You know, it's like, it's no coincidence all those rules in the Old Testament sort of favour certain men in the certain. There's not a coincidence, you know, and the same with, you know, it's no coincidence that if you're born in America, you're probably Christian. If you're born in India, probably a Hindu, etc., etc. We know that. But if we're talking about spirituality, I'm all for it. It's never bothered me. Someone belief in God has never bothered me. It's what do you do with it? If you start saying to me, I love this prophet or that prophet, I love God, I go, good. Fine, yeah, and I do this, and I believe it. Great, yeah, put it. And I think we should throw homosexuals off buildings. Well, no, now we've got to talk. Now we've got to talk, right? Just, you know. So it's when there's suddenly an agenda that coincidentally favours the person. You know, it's when people have exactly. Luckily, God agrees with them. Yeah. It's all there. Yeah. But, I've absolutely. And I think it was started with good intentions. In The Invention of Lying, when my character invents religion, he does it because he can't stand his mum's fear of death. And I remember when my mum was dying, if she asked me, I was thinking I was going to lie. I was like, yeah, there probably is, because if that, you know, I probably would have. So I think there's so many myths about atheism. We can go into the definitions and all that, but I think it's worse. People think that atheists run into churches and ruin people's days. You know, it's all bollocks. It's nothing's better than the truth. People ask me, say, have you ever been in a church? I go, yeah. It's lovely buildings. I love them. What do you mean? You know, it's this. I don't know where it comes from, and also technically, atheism doesn't even mean you don't believe in God. It means that you believe there's no God. It means that you just haven't found God yet. You know, there's no evidence, and that is true. It's, you know, core. And I've explained this many times that technically I'm an agnostic atheist, because one deals with knowledge and one deals with belief. So no one knows. If we agree that no one knows, we're all atheists. So now, what do you think? And believers say, I think there is a God. And atheists think, I don't think there is a God because I haven't got any evidence yet. So that is all I'm saying. As you say, religion's something else to belief and spirituality. And and people even say to me, if someone proved there was a God, would you believe? I go, well, of course I would. It wouldn't even be belief, it would be knowledge. It would also be the greatest discovery ever. Let's cancel the Nobel from now on. He's discovered God. It's done. And I think if that would change everything. I think, but until we know, I just don't. I don't want to live my life by a belief in something that I have no evidence in. That's all. That's all I'm saying. And I sometimes say to people that a good Christian or a good Muslim or a good Jew or whatever is someone who does all the good bits in that holy book and ignores the bad bits. And I say, if you already know right from wrong, you don't need the book. And you have to cherry pick. We know that the bad believers are the ones that do the bad bits too. So for me, it is personal. I just happen not to believe in God. I used to, but now I've thought about it, and I feel that I don't need a God. But the thing that I really object to is people assuming that you can't be a good person if you don't believe in a God, which is proved over and over again. And I've tweeted things like there are good atheists and bad atheists. There are good Christians and bad Christians, and a God has never changed that. And all I'm saying is, I get it. It doesn't. This is not me. It works both ways. You shouldn't judge people by their beliefs. You should judge them by their actual behaviour. Right and wrong. Some people believe the right thing but don't do the right thing, and vice versa. And I just think, I feel I don't need it. I just don't need a structured guidebook outside my own morality. And morality is relative and not absolute. And you'd have to keep... Dogma is the problem. I think dogma is the real problem. And it's not just in religion anymore. It's creeping into everything. It's creeping into politics, and it's creeping, identity politics. It's creeping into just social structures and opinions. It's if anyone says to me, this is what shouldn't be questioned, fuck that. No, let's question it. That's a red rag to a bull. You know what? Don't quit. I've always been like that. I've always been a teacher. Someone said that I'll always, even a board game, I think, what are the rules? Can I get out of my win within the rules? Yeah.
I've gone on sort of like the opposite journey, in that I feel like I started off atheistic just the same way that I would reject any attempt to impose regulation or control on me for the purposes of domination. But as I've gone through my own stuff with addiction and mental health or whatever it is, and like I know that you're very that, for example, afterlife is about legitimate grief as opposed to some kind of abstract idea of mental illness brought about by hormonal or neurological balance. But myself, my own sense of despair, particularly looking at it from a perspective of mental health issues and addiction, is that there is an unaddressed yearning for a kind of oneness, togetherness, and like to your point earlier about Brent, indeed for love. And when you talk about that sense of awe of the appreciation of an animal, the love of an animal, and the sort of regard and gratitude for having an animal love you and care for you, or the beauty of nature, or the deep beauty of the cosmos, what I feel like, and my own appreciation, understanding, stroke belief in God is that there is a kind of, in the love of it, in the awareness of rightness itself, there is an indication that there is such a thing as rightness. Not that any one particular group or ideology has unique, particular and special access to it. And I really firmly, deeply believe that spirituality is for me, not for me to tell other people, boy, I don't reckon you should be gay, or I don't reckon you should be allowed to do it. I feel like I do my shit.
In the Bible, it says you should pray secretly.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, like there is something sort of deeply private about it. But I also think, Ricky, that there is a social consequence to, I don't necessarily want to say atheism, because I completely agree with your point that there's good and bad, in like beyond those kind of limited taxonomies. But like, I do feel like when people think there's no purpose or meaning, that and that needn't necessarily be just because of a belief in God, that it creates cultures that are oddly materialistic, nihilistic. And I feel like in the last 20 years we're seeing more and more worship of self, worship of individual.
Well, of course, there's a new narcissism, of course, and I don't know why. I think social media is partly to blame. I think people being rewarded for bad behaviour is partly to blame. Magazines or TV or whatever. I did a speech in the Big Brother house as Andy Millman in Extras, and again, that was at the beginning of it, and now it's got worse. But a couple of points. I do think there's people crave a oneness, even if we don't go about understanding about why we're here, because again, that's very human. We're inquisitive. We want to know why. We want the answer why. And some people don't accept. Well, we don't know yet, but we're on the way. They got no. Well, that's no. The God of the gaps. We understand that. Well, if you don't know, explain it. God did it. Okay, well, it doesn't really solve anything. Even down to the. I put a joke in Afterlife where Kat's bothering me, and she says, "Where did it all come from? Somewhere from nothing." And I go, "Well, where did it all come from then?" She goes, "God made it." I go, "Okay, where did God come from?" She went, "He's always been around." I go, "Simple as that, isn't it?" So. It doesn't answer the question, but I get it. And I think, apart from people wanting there to be some sort of divine justice, because that would be great. Good people would be rewarded and bad people would be punished. Brilliant. Okay, it doesn't work like that. You only have to look at, children in Africa being born with cancer, and we know that's not. We know mysterious ways isn't an explanation, okay? That to me is someone who doesn't know the answer and says mysterious ways. But apart from that, you're right, we're seeking the answer. Why are we here? I think we think that, hold on, well, it's too good. It's too good to be chance. Everything's perfect. Well, it seems that way. It's like Douglas Adams' puddle. When it imagines this, I fit this hole perfectly. But I think you're right. We are scared and alone, and the idea of death is horrible. What, you'll never exist again? What was the point? And again, I talk about this in Afterlife 1, where I say, Kath's saying that if you think it's there's no heaven, why don't you kill yourself? And I say, so if you're watching a really good film but it's going to end, you might as well just stop it. She went, no, because I can watch it again. And I say, I think that's the amazing thing about life. You can't watch it again. One day you'll hug your mum for the last time. You'll smell your last flower. You'll eat your last meal. You won't know it's your last, but it will be your last. And so you've got to make the most of everything. And it is a terrifying prospect. It is like sad that we'll never exist again, I think. But it doesn't mean it's not true. The bottom line is, I can't believe something I don't believe. And so how do I find meaning? Well, we are here. We are here. The chances of us being us, you being you and me being me, existing now, that sperm hitting that egg is 400 trillion to 1. We're not special, but we are lucky. We do exist. It's incredible. And I think of it, it's like a holiday. We don't exist for 13.5 billion years. Then we explode into this this electronic blob of thought, introspection, love, hate, fear, beauty, horror for 80, 90, 100 years if we're lucky. Then we die and we never exist again. We return, our atoms return, and it carries on, right? And that's not scary, because I think people are scared of death because they don't know what's beyond. And someone said to me, well, what do you think it feels like when you die? And I say, like the 13.5 billion years before I was born. And that was all right. So, but but the big thing is injecting meaning. I think you're totally right. When you start thinking about it, why are we here? Well, I mean, not even the how, but why. Well, to live your life to the fullest and not hurt anyone. To leave the world in a better place than it was when you came into it. To experience everything, all the reasons, all the obvious reasons, love, wine, dogs, learning, all these great things that you can do every minute of every day that you're alive, and then you check out. You go, I'm done, thanks, and it's done, and it's beautiful. It's fucking beautiful.
It is beautiful. But I was struck when you said that by a few things. One is like this sort of like the injection of meaning, as in, like meaning would have to be imported externally, fabricated somehow, invented. Whereas I think on some level, I feel that that meaning is inhered, and that the meaning is in the kind of zeal that you have when you describe the things that give you love, pleasure, connection, whether it's wine or dogs or whatever. I've had like some experiences like through meditation, and when I took drugs too young, and now I'm not allowed to do ayahuasca or LSD or them things that I would definitely be doing if I wasn't in recovery. But I had like these experiences that were a kind of, I would say, a sort of an evaporation of self and yet a continued awareness. I know that my consciousness is connected to my biology, but I have a sense somewhat derived from the fact that, you can't trace how mechanical parts ever become conscious, that consciousness may be elemental somehow. Now that doesn't point to a god in a traditional patriarchal or domineering sense, but it sort of points to an element that's very difficult to quantify, whether that's the deep intelligence of nature, the deep mathematics of biochemistry and biology, and the essential mystery of consciousness itself, commonly referred to as the hard problem. And through these sort of individual experiences, whilst I've not had anything that you would call typically religious, Jesus emerging out of a tunnel, Ganesh lashing around, or any of that sort of stuff, what I've had is like it's highly bloody interpretive, because say there's this one breath thing I do. You breathe from the abdomen very aggressively, and then you sort of take a sharp inhale, and you nearly, a medical man would say what you're doing there is hyperventilating and nearly passing out. But from the inside, what it feels like is bloody hell. For this moment, I'm aware and I am not me. What is this? What is this? Is there a possibility that my awareness, your awareness, the awareness of all animals, and an awareness that's impossible to read is somehow present in all nature, in all matter? And if that's true, then there's a kind of a genuine cohesion and togetherness between all of the beings of the earth and beyond. And those people that can't actually enjoy the lives that we are privileged to have, of the red wine or the dogs or whatever, I'm not saying that's some sort of comfort to them, but in fact, those of us that are in privileged position might feel newly incentivized to work towards a different kind of society and system that is more reflective of those values. Now, that doesn't necessarily require monotheism, pantheism, or any of those things, but it is somewhat underwritten by a kind of a sameness and a oneness, and how that might relate to justice. And also, there is a sort of a personal experience of mystery in it. I wonder what you feel about that, and if you're curious about psychedelics and that and altered states and that.
I love a good mystery, and you're right. It is a mystery. All science it does is it's a discipline that follows the evidence. And what science keeps saying, and some people say this is a flaw, that it's been wrong before. Well, science never been wrong before. Our interpretation, scientists been wrong for. Science is just a way to look and understand the physical universe. And what science says, it keeps saying, okay, this is the least wrong theory we've got so far. And then the next day it goes, okay, we're even less wrong today. We were less wrong today. They've mapped the beginning of the universe to a fraction of a second, which is pretty close. But I think science keeps proving itself over and over again. And the fact that we don't understand, the mind-body problem completely yet, that is the beauty. And the more we understand, the more questions it throws up. It's like, people say the missing link. Like there's this fossil and there's this fossil, and we find that one, and people go, no, there's two missing links, so you can't win, and all science keeps doing is just keep filling the gaps and finding new gaps. But yeah, you're right. I think that it's amazing what intelligence is. I'm a determinist, which changes nothing. I believe that free will is an illusion. So be it. If it feels like it, it might as well be. But then to analyse it and go, well, we're machines. We are machines. We are machines. We're machines trying to understand ourselves, and that's hard. Will there one day be a computer that is suffering from anxiety? I reckon so. I reckon there'll be a genius computer that's worried about shit. I really do.
Yeah, that's the summit.
We're lumps of meat. We're chimps with brains the size of a planet. Of course we go mad and try and kill each other and worry about what's the point. Of course we do. It's overwhelming. And the more you think about it, the more frightening it is. So I just think that my new show, Supernature, I start with saying it's called Supernature for two reasons. One, I want to debunk the supernatural. I don't believe in anything supernatural. I think that anything that exists is by definition part of nature and is explainable. If not now, then eventually. And also supernature because nature is super enough. We don't need angels and unicorns. We've got the fucking octopus. And then I go into, we don't need to look. I feel we don't need to look elsewhere. That doesn't mean I'm not in awe of poetry and intelligence. And, I just don't think that unweaving the rainbow spoils it. I think it makes it more exciting. When I see a card trick and I don't know how it's done, and then the magician tells me, I can't wait for him to show someone else who doesn't know how it's done. And how it's done is more exciting for me. Just do you know what I mean? Yes,
I do. And I also sort of don't believe in magic, that kind of stuff. One of the things I spoke to Neil deGrasse Tyson about was, that dude, he's amazing, isn't he? Like I spoke to him about the sort of
quantum physics. All bets are off. We can talk like this till we're blue in the face, and then quantum physics comes along, and there's that saying: if you think you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics.
Yeah,
it's magic. Quantum physics, by all our definitions of science and nature, right? And we're intelligent people. We've read a bit. We think, right? We've got a good brain. We've got as good a brain as anyone. But fuck quantum physics. It's mental.
Yes. It sort of seems what I like that came up in our conversation, and I sort of used it to illustrate my feeling that the limitations of our senses and the limitations of our capacity to handle knowledge mean that there will always be a realm beyond knowledge, that all scientific disciplines are contingent upon amplification of existing senses, microscopic, telescopic, even calculating devices like AI, and that I don't see like quantum physics as woo type magic, but I do see it as an indication of fucking hell. There is an intelligence at work.
It's just we can't. Like some people say, you can't understand it like God can understand it because you haven't got God's brain. Well, that is quantum physics to me. The fact that it happens means it exists and it's true and it's scientific. But then to ask us to understand it, now that's a big ask, because it's incredible, just the uncertainty principle, the fact that I want it to be metaphor. I want it to go, we don't literally mean it's in two places at once. I go, yeah, we do, because the way that time's... Right, start again, right? Right, I've got 2 potatoes. It's because, and usually it's the scale of things that we can't fathom, but it doesn't mean it's not true. And if it's true, it's real. It's as simple as that for me. And I know that sounds like a linguistic trick for me to get away without actually feeling that I understand it. But it doesn't make it not true. And that's all I think. The fact that I don't understand something doesn't mean it's not understandable. I wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that because I don't understand consciousness and the fact that the universe is expanding, it doesn't mean it's not true. So I think I've always got that get-out clause. I don't have to leap for a being did it, a different being on a different plane and level made it. That's all I don't know. And I think that most people would be satisfied if you sat them down and said, all those things that you think God did, right? He did. He just doesn't have a will like you think he does. He's just nature.
Yes.
And I think some people would be happy with that, I think.
Yes, because will is like, if, as much as I can understand it, strongly related to my individual imperatives, which are based on survival, which are therefore material, need to procreate, need to have food, need to have shelter, need to die. So will, however it might refract through a culture that no longer requires of me that I seek shelter or find food, like all culture is coming from this place. And I think when we're talking about the absolute, whether we're talking about it in sort of materialistic scientific terms or spiritual or even religious terms, it's not going to be something that we can comprehend and understand. And I've always used that as a kind of rebuttal to the idea of why do bad things happen, because I feel like we are on such a narrow bandwidth of all potential realities, of all potential understandable forms and unforms, that our notions of good and bad are inhibited. We are beyond that.
Yes. Well, this is another point. Again, I put it in Afterlife as a bit of a joke, where Kath says to me, "If you don't believe in God and heaven and all that, why don't you just go out raping and murdering as much as you want?" And I say, "I do," which is not at all. And that's a scary prospect that some people, because they think in absolute morality, they think that there's no point in being good without a God. And that's quite a big school of thought that people take that to the nth degree. They go, and my worry is that if you're only not murdering because you think God's watching, that's scary.
Yeah, like it's the purge.
If that's what stops you murdering, then yeah, okay, that's whatever gets you through. So. Yeah, I don't believe in absolute morality, because I think that we invented morality as a code to live by so we could all be as happy as possible. There are different laws for different times and different species. The law of the spider is not the same as the law as the human. We know that. If I'm starving, I don't eat my own legs. And when we mate, we don't bite the head of the partner afterwards. So it's a nonsense to try and equate morality with nature and spirituality and religion. It is because people got together and decided that the best way to live, that's society more than anything, and morality existed before any God, in my opinion, before any God, and they just took the golden rule, which I love, but it's not religions that do as you would be done by, and I think it's a really good rule of thumb, and if everyone did that, the world would instantly be a better place, without any God interference. And the other one that I've come to love, probably my favourite piece from the Bible that everyone's forgotten, and I see it more and more in the last 10, 15 years, and particularly on social media, is let those amongst you who is without sin cast the first stone. And I tell you, that would shut so many fucking people up. You know, despite what people think of me, I'm not a very judgmental person in my private. I go, whatever, you know, good luck to them. You know, I always try and see. I even try and empathise with what you'd call bad people. I think, well, why do they do that? I'm always willing to. I'd be a judge going, promise you won't do it again. You know, I would. Okay, you know what I mean? I really do. You know, one better 1,000 guilty go free than one innocent person. You know, but we do have to have these societal laws for the benefit of everyone. And the irony is that a secular society would defend all rights to religious belief more than any one religion does. But it's saying is, let's not make it law. Let's not make superstition law. Let's not. And it's so funny. I see it. I see the hypocrisy in a so-called Christian country, free country, who hate the idea of this fundamentalist state, but they're doing the same. It's just that theirs is a different God they're doing it with. You're the same. You're the same. You think God is on your side, and you can, you know, your tribe can rule. So yeah, unlike all religions, I treat all religions equally.
Yes. What about, though, secularism is some degree underwritten by economic ideologies and I would say sort of social systems that in a way behave precisely as religions do, in that they inhibit, impede.
I don't agree with that at all, because all secularism says that we want to separate church from state. That, you know, you don't base any laws on a particular belief in a particular God or religion. You know, that's all it's really saying, isn't it? And you know what? In the freest, most liberal, sensible societies, it is secular, really. But some people go to church, and that's fine. It doesn't bother anyone. But on an exam with biology, physics, and chemistry, the answer isn't God did it. That's all. That's all a secular society insists. You know, this works. Biology works. Physics works. It works over and over again. It's just induction. But I would. People said, if you could, would you ban religion? I go, no, I honestly wouldn't. I honestly wouldn't ban religion. In fact, if someone started banning someone the right to believe in whatever God, I'd march, going, let them believe in that God. It's your right to believe in whatever. Honestly, I'd fight for anyone's right to believe in God, goblins, witches. You know, just don't throw homosexuals off buildings, and we're fine.
Yeah, I think in the end it becomes God and good become synonymous in any meaningful ideology. That there is a kind of a sense of harmony and as best possible fairness and non-intervention.
Well, it's all I've got. You know, I've lost the working class thing now, so all I've got is atheism as my oppression. There's 13 countries where I'd be put to death, and in America we were voted least trustworthy group along with rapists. So I've always got atheism. I'm oppressed, Russell. Oppressed.
In that case, I'm on your side.
Yeah.
Oh, wicked, Ricky. We done an hour there, mate. That's
wow, it's my nap time.
Yeah, that's where you could go back into your carefully guarded rituals of soup and whatever else it is that holds you together in your godless, nihilistic expanse.
Well, I'd just like to say, I'll give you the compliment. It's so lovely to see you well and all grown up, not sitting there in a sheet, but in real proper clothes. And I couldn't be prouder.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, mate. I'll carry that. Thanks, man. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed that conversation, go over to luminarypodcast.com now and sign up for a week's free trial and listen to the many, many fantastic conversations that I've had on this platform. Simon Amstel being but one of them. Who did we do recently that I was well into? David Eagleman, absolutely fantastic. I mean, Frankie Boyle. There's just so many brilliant conversations. All right, lots of love. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in.